Well, thank you, Rebecca, and congratulations on quite a year of accomplishment leading the Academy to these new places. I'm excited this year to have Tony Tsai be our keynote speaker. This forum hasn't had a keynote speaker in a while, so most of the presentations are all generated by us here. And this year we decided, hearing Tony over the last year and the work he's doing here at the university and seeing his vision for education would be a great opportunity to share. Tony Tsai is currently the Director of Career and Leadership Development for the University Health Sciences. His vision is to help people connect to their meaning and their authentic purpose in their career. He uses coaching and leadership training to do this. In previous roles, he's been a has led strategic transformation efforts in medical education. He's a former officer of the U.S. Army. He holds an MBA from Columbia Business School and a BBA from Wharton School of Business. So welcome, Tony, and we'll turn the room over to you.
Thank you, everybody. It's really an honor to be here. I, love seeing you guys here, and the work that we do. And I just want to affirm that the way that we've been approaching the last year and a half, it's been almost heroic. And I just want to give everybody a pat on the back and just kind of recognition for all the great work that you have done. Today, you know me. I think a lot of you know me. When I talk, I aim not to just be completely didactic. When I talk, you're going to do some reflection. And I have a worksheet, so I'm going to send this worksheet to you, and then we're gonna reflect on a few things together as a community. All right, so I'm gonna go find this. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, and so. As you know, I used to be in the Army, and that was a very meaningful part of my life. And I guess I still watch a bunch of war movies, and the war movies is always like, later on some old person reflects back on the war he was fighting. And I thought, like, when I was in the Army, I was like, man, when I was old, man, what am I going to tell my grandkids about the war that I was fighting? And of course, I never fought in any wars, and so, but I think about this time, 2020, 2021, and it is like, from a military point, it's kind of like a war, right? We're kind of fighting this thing together, right? And I tell my kids, like, you're going to want to remember this time, right? You're going to want to remember this time, because this is something that you will never forget for the rest of your life, right? And so we can sort of say together that during this time that we served together during this time, that we worked really hard, and we stepped up, right? And so I just want to first say that it's really an honor to serve here with all of you here in healthcare and education. You are, I would say, the most dedicated group of people that I've ever worked with, and so I would just say you should hold your head up high, about the work that you are doing. And I am just saying, I would say I am grateful every day. I wake up and I'm just grateful every day to be here. Part of it is like the mountains, but I think even more than the mountains, I feel like I'm really grateful to be a part of this community. And so, so that's my main topic. And so I'm sort of done, but they say, well, you have to keep talking. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll keep talking. So I'm going to keep talking. So let's introduce another topic. All right. And so they gave me some topics, and they were talking about, like, one of them was the joy of work, right? And it's like, the joy of work, cool. And so I thought that was interesting. But normally when you hear me talk about the future and vision and things like that, and let's do this new cool thing. But I have to tell you, I do have a lot of joy in my work, but I'm also, like, really tired. Really tired. I'm like, I have a deep sense of tiredness, right? And so I kind of don't want to talk about all the work that we're going to be doing in the future. That will not inspire us to persevere. I would like to talk about joy in our work, right? And so, in case you missed it, So you guys are seeing the slides, correct? I just want to make sure you guys see it. Okay, good. There is this thing that's happening in the rest of the country. It's called the Great Resignation, and maybe it's even partly here in the healthcare system, right? And according to Gallup, almost like half of the American working population is actively searching for a new job, right? And I was looking for the causes of this, and the causes of this mainly is lack of advancement opportunities, lack of identification with purpose, and really a lack of community, right? And so those are the three main reasons. And I thought to myself, they're all pretty good. I mean, I feel like those three things is something we do have here in our community. Like we have a really strong community, we have a very strong purpose, and there are opportunities for advancement. So what is it that is, affecting us, right? And to me, I feel like we are experiencing a bit of overwork, right? And so that's part of the reason why, I don't want to talk about future initiatives and things like that. Sure, there are future initiatives to be had. We just kind of somehow have to get through this time, all right, in order to get through those future initiatives, right? And so I think to myself, what is it that we could do today, just to kind of help us get through this time, okay? And I recently talked to a bunch of first-year med students. They just came in. I just talked to them, and I said, you guys need to study less. I tell my kids to study more, but you guys need to study less, right? And these med students, and I look at I created this chart. So I said, what am I experiencing here? And over the summer I turned 49, and so I'm like, what is the difference between me of 29 and me of 29? And I would just say the me of 49, I'm tired all the time. I'm tired all the time, right? And a lot of my friends are now in their 50s, and I talk to them. We sit down and we have tea together. And they say to me, I just can't grind clinically like those 30-year-olds. And I go, yeah, totally, right? I mean, we can't hang with them anymore. They have so much more energy, right? They have so much more energy. But I feel like, something that we do have is wisdom. And I hope that one of the interesting things, for a lot of people in the country, they're leaving their jobs. And I'm not telling them we should leave our jobs, but I'm just saying it is making them recognize something. They are learning something, right? And I sort of want we're educators, to learn something through this experience as well, right? And so there is something. I was listening to a podcast, and they say, well, do you learn more things when you are in good times or in hard times? And of course, you learn more in hard times. We are in hard times. So there's certain things, certain pieces of wisdom for us to be able to get out of this, right? And so I sort of look at our jobs, and it's part of it, there is a lot of meaning to it. But how do we bring more joy into it, right? We're kind of wrestling with these two things. And so this is not something I've done a lot of, but I'm just going to read a bunch of poems to you, essentially. I'm going to read a bunch of poems to you today. And so I don't know if I'm an awesome poem narrator, but just please hang with me. And so through these poems, we're going to do some reflection. And so the first one I wanted to point out was this one that says from the Inferno. So the Inferno, a lot of us heard of it. This is the beginning of the Inferno by Dante. All right. And so I'm going to read this to you. In the middle of the journey of our life, I came to myself in a dark wood where the direct way was lost. It is a hard thing to speak of, how wild, harsh, and impenetrable that wood was, so that thinking of it recreates the fear. It is scarcely less bitter than death, but in order to tell the good that I found there, I must tell you the other things that I saw there, right? And so part of this is this idea is I feel like we are kind of on our way. We're in this direct path of assistant professor, associate professor, and then boom, we're in this kind of dark woods now, right? And the world is really strange. We find ourselves in sort of what am I supposed to do? What is going on? And we find the world in that same place, right? And so this is something that it's very interesting. I just read and I go, wow, this has a lot of parallels to both life and kind of the experience that we have in this world. And so what happens is we are going down this way. And then it goes, I cannot rightly say how I entered it. I was so full of sleep. In a way, we sleepwalked our way into this thing. We were just following a thing. And then boom, we are here, At that point where I abandoned the true way, but when I reached the foot of a hill, where the valley that had pierced my heart with fear came to an end, I looked up and saw shoulders brightened with the rays of that sun that leads men rightly on every road. Then the fear that had settled in the lake of my heart through the night that I had spent so miserably became a little bit calmer. And so this idea is that, the world is definitely changing and we are definitely in the middle of change. And the thing is, it's very dark, I would say. There's a lot of things going on in the world. And I think there's like good news and bad news, right? Bad news is like we already know the bad news, but the good news in a way is this idea that things have to change. In a way, things have to change for something new to come about, right? And so we are within higher ed, within healthcare, things are in the process of changing. I think you will see that 2020, 2021 is a pivot point, is a beginning of a pivot point, all right? So we are in this dark place, all right? But this isn't a dark place that we just stay in this dark place and we just stay there forever. What happens, you'll sort of see that you can look at this back part. It says, then the fear that had settled in the lake of my heart through the night I had spent so miserably became a little bit calmer. So this idea is that, look, we have to go through this thing, right? And it will get better, right? And so part of our job is to sort of persevere through this, and part of the job is to kind of stay sane, be still good influences, and manage ourselves, right? How do we keep ourselves in a place that allows us to go on? I read a lot of about Stoicism these days. Just working on my own sort of temperament, right? And the one thing I read is from Viktor Frankl, and I was watching a interview with him, and he was saying, D equals S minus M, in his German Austrian accent, and says despair equals suffering minus meaning, and it says you can be in a terrible place, but how do you persevere through that? You can't always control the outside environment, but what you can control is some of the meaning that you give to what is going on. That's the part you can control, the M part, the meaning part, right? And so in the end, we do actually have a lot of control. Maybe not over external circumstances. We can't necessarily control who gets, people don't want to get vaccinated. I don't know, but it's maybe not possible, right? And there's other things. And so there's certain things that really are frustrating that we can't necessarily control, right? But we can still create meaning. And so through this meaning, so he goes on to say, the one thing you can't take away from me is the way that I choose to respond to what you do to me. The last of one's freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance, right? And so this is something that we still have, right? So that sounds like really, very, very lofty for a Holocaust survivor who's and so I would just say, maybe there's also another more down to earth example. So I was talking to this fourth year med student. She was talking to me about how hard the third year was for her, and so she goes, you go out to the wards, you sort of don't know anything, you don't know anybody, you don't know and then you're worried about your grades, and everything is kind of coming at you. This is how this med student's feeling, and this is sometimes how we feel, right? Everything's coming at us, And so she said to me, I have this mantra I have for myself. This mantra is bold and brave. When I am feeling sort of this, I recenter myself with this mantra. It says bold and brave, right? And this allows me to kind of it allows me to kind of maintain, sort of myself during times where it's very stressful for me, right? And I think about this, and it kind of inspired me to have my own mantra, So I'm sort of in my process of developing a set of mantras for myself, A lot of times even if you're in whatever position you're in, there's going to be people who will be very frustrating to you. And then you're going to want to lose your temper. You're going to want to and so then how do you not lose how do you kind of maintain a certain sense of equanimity? And so I would just say, go back to sort of creating this mantra, right? And so once you have the mantra, not only do you kind of protect yourself, you are also still able, despite the outer circumstances, to act from, I'll call it your authentic self, all right? And so the first, just kind of a very basic reflection, I would like to just give you like maybe a minute 15, just to get you started, is here on this worksheet. Just say 3 words to describe you at your best, right? And then your emergency mantra is like, press button one in case of like triggering. And so like when things are really, they're like, okay, I'm gonna say this to myself and I'm gonna recenter myself. So I have my timer here. If you guys are okay, I'm gonna set it for like another minute. And so if you guys, we'll just kind of sit here for a minute and just reflect a little bit. All right. All right. So if you haven't finished it, I would just encourage you to kind of continue on to kind of think about it. This is something that I hope will be very of practical use to you. A lot of us, we deal with people who are maybe in a less equanimous state than we are. Potentially, and we are trying to be of help to them. And so, for us to be able to do that, we have to be ourselves, to be kind of even ourselves. And this is maybe a way for us to maintain that evenness. Okay. Um, Now, I have kids, and what's interesting is I would say that it wasn't that many years ago that I was still reading a bunch of these type of books to my kids. And so I still know all the plots of all these books, then including The Very Hungry Caterpillar. And so I thought about like, I mean, yeah, I read a bunch of Stoic books, but I also read The Very Hungry Caterpillar. I still remember The Very Hungry Caterpillar. I thought, that this might be a good way to kind of begin to think through, and so I want to like to use this as part of our reflection. All right, and so this idea is that there's these 3 pieces. The caterpillar is currently there's a current focus that we have. There's future things and there's past things. Right. Obviously, I call it the very constipated caterpillar now because of the fact that I think what we keep doing is we just eat more stuff like, oh, more responsibility. I'm just gonna eat that. And then eventually we just get so constipated that we are not ourselves because we are so constipated. And so we need to figure out how to manage these 3 pieces. So it's going to go into starting with this idea of focusing on contributing your authentic gift. Okay. And so I want you to kind of that as a prompt for you. All right. And I actually had a discussion with a colleague of mine. She recently gave up some administrative duties and she was just reflecting on her freedom. And we're just saying, what is the difference between responsibility and duty? Right. And we had an interesting discussion about that because of course we have our job titles and job descriptions. And so there's that. And there's also our unique gifts. And so then of course, we have to do both, we do both. But I sometimes worry that maybe our job descriptions overshadows what we're really able to do. Like, I think a lot of times what we do, if it's a job description, is somewhat can be done by other people. Like, so in a way, doesn't use our true authentic gifts. And so I would like us also to be a little bit more mindful of that. That I think will be also part of the joy. All right. And so I'm going to ask you, like, what is the most joyful thing you like to do at work? That's going to be the prompt for you to think about. So I'm going to read a poem to you. I'm going to tell you stuff as you kind of think about this. All right. So here's the poem. Favorite book ever. It's called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And he has an excerpt. I'm going to read you an excerpt about work. He says, "What is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching. Right? And so the part that I really want to emphasize here is this part that says it is to charge all things all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit. Right? So that will create the joy. Right? And so I'd not share you with, again, that's lofty. I share with you like a more down to earth example here. And so when I was at Michigan, I was talking to some med students, and that once I moved to Utah, U of M still asked me, can we still send over some students for you to work with? Because, they've been struggling with their interview process or their application process for residency. So I said, okay, that felt good. So I was talking with a student who was applying for ophthalmology. So ophthalmology as a residency is very competitive. And so what you'll find right now is you get a lot of type A people applying for ophthalmology. And so this student was very, I would say, calm and almost passive. And so that's what the faculty was writing, too passive. And so I was talking to this student, and in talking to this person, I mean, after a while, after you talk to thousands of people, you begin to get some intuitive senses of people. And the intuitive sense I got from this person was that the word water was weird. So I asked this person, I know this is going to sound weird, but do you like swimming? And he said, yeah, I was a captain of the college swim team. I'm like, well, yes, of course. Yes, that makes total sense. And I said, well, tell me about your leadership style. Right. And he was saying, I make sure everything flows, and lots of water language, right? And I said, I can sort of see how, if you're applying to a very type A culture, that may be overlooked, right? But you'll have to understand that, think about things maybe 10 to 15 years down in the future when you run a clinical team, that you will probably find that your team will flow very well because of the way that you are. All right. And so your main job is to put this part of you, the flow part of you, into that work. Right. Of course, there's going to be a job description. Here's what an ophthalmologist does, but there's also the part of that's you. And it is your job to kind of put that into that work. Right. And so that is the first reflection here. Underneath the middle part of the caterpillar, I want you just to kind of remind yourself, like, what brings you joy in work? What are those things? All right. So I've been talking a little bit, so just give you another maybe 30 seconds just to jot down some things. But it's important to kind of remind yourself. All right. Believe it or not, I used to be a finance analyst. So that was not a joyful part of my work. So I eventually left that behind. And so I love teaching. Teaching is great joy for me. And so I just make sure that teaching is a part of my work. So whatever it is that I feel like is important, I try my best to make sure I focus on it. I do. I mean, even for this talk, I spent so much time just thinking about it. I really like racked my brain. I was like, what poems am I going to choose and things like that, right? But it was okay because it brought me joy. All right. And so I would encourage you guys, as you kind of always remind yourself, what is it? You're in a place that inherently has a lot of meaning, but it's not necessarily just enough to kind of just say, wow, I work in healthcare, I work in education. Therefore, there's still even deeper. You have gifts. You have gifts to contribute. All right. And so just make sure what you're really doing is giving your gifts every day through that work. Okay. Now I would like to talk maybe about the future. All right. So this is, I'm going to read you a poem by David White from the book of House of Belonging. It's called The Life. And I think he's writing about himself. And so this idea is at the center of this life, there is a man I want to know again. He has a new house, a clear view of the mountain. That's what made me thought, oh, clear view of the mountain. I can totally identify that. I have a clear view of the mountain, but I still want to know myself a little bit more. And hidden in the close grained wood of his desk, a new book of poems. He has left the life he once tried to love. Now it is only a shadow calling for another shadow. And this shadow wants to become real again. It falls against walls and fences and stairways, the dark penumbra of my belonging. Now let me cast my shadow against life before the specter haunts me to my grave. And so what happened here is that, of course, in our careers, we used to be super idealistic. And we're going to go and change the world. We're going to do this. And we're going to do this. And then like real life happens. And then we're just like, oh, okay, I got to do this job. And then I'm going to go and do this thing. And in a way, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't have done that thing. I did that thing, right? I did that thing. And so, but then after a while, that original self calls again, right? And so sometimes we spend the back half of that career coming back to it, all right? You guys are all just established educators. And so I just say, you know, within education, you in education, there is still something there. There's still something there. That is, you're not quite exactly fully expressing who you are, that there's still something for you to do, all right? And so I kind of want you to think about, let's say, let's say let's say I just lose track of you and I run into you 5 years from now in the airport and I say, hey, how's it going? And you say, wow, it was amazing. My life is amazing. Work is amazing. And it's like, well, 5 years from now, when everything's really amazing, what are the new things in your life? Like, what are the things in your work that is maybe doesn't even exist now, but something you've been thinking about doing, something potentially is just starting off a little bit that you would like to make bigger in your career, right? So that 5 years from now, it has become fully matured. And then it is taking you to a deeper place that you really wanted to create all along. All right. And so let me give you a little bit of time, just like maybe 45 seconds, just to kind of think about 1 to 3 things that like 5 years from now, your work is amazing because what? All right. So the funny thing is, like, a lot of us are actually pretty good at this. We're like good thinkers. We like things. Things are exciting. We like things. But now we get to the other part, the poop. Okay, so the poop. So the poop part is very important. And so this is not a poem, but it is a book that I read. It's really nice. It was published in the early 1900s, you know, and so I just read you a passage. This passage says this: "You are not to overwork, nor to rush blindly into your business in the effort to do the greatest possible number of things in the shortest possible time. It is really not the number of things you do, but the efficiency of each separate action that counts. Every efficient act is a success in itself." Okay. So I think there are some people who maybe are not doing enough, and that's no good. You got to do more. And there are some people who are maybe doing too much, and that actually decreases the efficiency, right? Sometimes you go into work, you feel like you've been doing stuff all day, but you feel like, I don't know if I really got anything done. That's not efficient, right? That kind of, and I think for a lot of us, we're doers, really. And part of our work, in order for us to have greater joy, is to kind of step away from certain things. Okay. And I don't know if you guys ever, anytime you have had kind of are able to kind of say, end something, isn't there such a great sense of relief? Like, oh my God, thank God I don't have to do that anymore, you know? And so that actually is like a very important thing to do. Otherwise, you become the very constipated caterpillar, right? You know? And so therefore, in order to maintain your regularity, you have to shed old projects and responsibilities. Okay. And so also, Wallace was also saying in his book, you know, anything that you have outgrown, you need to discard. Anything that you have outgrown, you need to discard. All right. A lot of us don't discard things. All right. And so I would like us just to take another 45 seconds. This will take you, I would say, continue to do this part. After this, look at this part. And I really would ask you that what COVID is telling you, a lot of people quit their jobs. But I'm not telling you should quit your job, but there are certain things you need to quit. There's certain things you need to quit in order to properly learn from this experience. And so what are those things? And so let me just give you like 45 seconds for this last reflection. So we have it, these three things. You know, we are lucky in many respects in that the work that we do is very meaningful. And I think for a lot of us, we do have a lot of joy in that work. And so, and I mean, that is like a real blessing. But I think there's still a long ways to go, right? There's still this process. It's a very continuous process to kind of manage our growth, right? You know, we're encouraging other people, learners, to grow, and we ourselves have to grow, right? And our growth isn't so much that we're going to, like, you know, read another textbook and take a test, but we have to manage our life properly, right? And part of it, is, of course, is understanding more and more what is the gift that we're trying to contribute, and then knowing that there is still more, not so much, but a deeper way we can do it, and through our work that we always are continually looking for that deeper way, right, in the future. And at the same time, of the things that we have already mastered, the things that we have already sort of, even though we are very comfortable with those things, that begin the process of letting those things go. All right, hanging on to those things will actually not create joy. So what I want to do is just, I hope this reflection, you know, has helped to kind of create sort of growth and sort of being able to deepen our joy and the impact of our work. I just have one last poem to share with you, and then video. So it's a summer day by Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, with moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know how exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass and how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? I want to thank you for um, being here today in our community, and I hope this was helpful, and I wish you joy in your work.
Thank you, Tony. We could all come off mute and clap. Wonderful to serve with you, Tony. And I'm very glad you chose not to be a financial consultant for your whole life, and that your passions have brought you to health sciences education. Very much appreciate your view about joy at work and how we create it. And I wish you could see my little desktop here. I have a lot of notes going. We have time for questions and interaction. We have comments coming in the chat box as well, but please feel free to come off mute and offer comments or reflections of your thoughts as Tony's worked us through how we grow, how we shed, how we become unconstipated. Rebecca's raised her hand.
So this was absolutely fabulous. Yes, I have a ton of notes over here, but would love to hear your thoughts on how we might help each other to discover their gifts if somebody's struggling on their own.
Yeah, one of the things I was even thinking about this was the fact that one of the joys of work is the community, and you'll see like this community is amazing. I love like this community. And I don't know if there's some way that we can do more social stuff together somehow. And if I can say, I don't know, I'm trying to be PC, but I'm also sort of saying, I see a lot of times educators are like a bit too humble. Like, I don't know if I have that problem sometimes, but like I know that other people, like they're just so amazing, but they refuse to acknowledge it. And so I would imagine, I think there's like two things, right? A lot of times. So I would just say, point that thing out in somebody else. When you see it, say it. Just say, look, that was really good what you did. That was really good. So that's important. A lot of educators are just they don't like that stuff, and so they don't like boasting. They don't like boasting, but they will accept sort of that type of comment. I also realize, like, just in healthcare, for example, there's so much hard work, but there's also not enough, like, just in general recognition. I just say everybody has done such hard work, and there's really not enough, time and energy for like top management to kind of say things. And so I would encourage everyone, even if you're just like, hey, I'm just going to send somebody an email, just say, hey, I appreciate what you do. All right. And so this will go a long ways to strengthen this really amazing community. This community is really good. And so just more contact. I would just say, it's like, you deserve more recognition, everybody here. And the way to get it is to give it, and then you will see that it goes around. And so that's my thought about that.
Tony, I have a comment. Maybe the fact that I cried through your talk describes my emotional state, but I don't know. But I don't know when the last time I didn't stand up from a Zoom meeting was. So I didn't leave it was great. It was wonderful. I'm fairly new faculty, and I really need to thank you for speaking to my heart. So many parts of what you talked about I'll be emotional. This has been so hard. And I came to education because it's what I thought I was good at, and it's what I thought I had to offer. And then I felt suffocated. So thank you, because I think I realized during this talk was that I still love to be with students. I still love to educate. It's just really hard, and I have to figure out how to do it a little different. So I guess I'm asking you is like, I'm fairly young. I'm not young. I'm young in my faculty career, but I'm old. So I think it's hard sometimes, Tony, for us to figure out where we do focus our time. I was writing down all the books that you were giving us, and maybe do you have advice, even though I'm old but young in my career, like where do I start?
Yeah. A lot of times when people are new in new places, I recommend to them that they go and reach out to like one new person a week. I mean, I don't know, that was in the pre-COVID days. I don't know how things work as much these days, but like, go meet people. Like, look at all these people. You should go meet some of these people, right? This is one of the reasons why the Academy is so cool, is because there's so many amazing people here. And so you will feel much more, much better, more belonging. And a lot of times, and I also tell used to do a lot of career counseling with people, and people will be like, I'm just going to do it myself. And, we're all a bunch of type A do-it-yourselfers. But I say, when you get stuck, just go talk to like 10 people. And I promise you, they will give you some interesting ideas to start from. As you talk to people, you yourself will get a lot of ideas. And so that sometimes is whenever I'm stuck, I'd start reaching out to people. I'd be like, hey, let's just have coffee and let's talk. And so then I'm always like, after those talks, I'm like, oh my gosh. And these are all educators. So they all have perspectives to give. And so it's really important, to talk to one another and share and help one another.
I think COVID didn't help me. That wasn't very nice of it to show up right when I became faculty.
Thank you, Natalie. Please, everyone, feel free. We have time to come off mute and offer comments. Tony, again, I know you've been busy managing the whole room, but I'd really like you to see the comments in the chat. Your words were very impactful to people. I could felt it myself, that has been reflected in Natalie's words and others' words. What a time to focus on creating our purpose and our mission and our joy and supporting our community as health science educators. And you are so right. Over the last 2 years, I've seen amazing work from my colleagues and myself too. I have to say, we have to reflect back and see our strengths. Can you give us a command? You don't seem like a person who gives commands, but wait a minute, you were in the Army. What you would like to see us do with our thoughts and words you created in our head today in the next short while?
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the best things about Utah and this place is the community. And one thing I would it's really hard because, I'll be honest with you, like, I'm a very goal-directed person. I write goals for myself and I do those goals. And I found that in the last year, I used to be able to do 80% of my goals, get those things done. And now I get about 50% of my goals done and I'm really tired. I don't really know why. I don't know why. I used to have this extra gear, and that extra gear doesn't work very well. And I'm like always behind, and I just have to and I'm kind of a little bit harder on myself. And one of the first things I would just say to you is that, forgive yourself for all that. You're really gonna, things are gonna be slower. You're not gonna get as many things done as you thought you were. And, and it's okay. That's really no big deal. Like, in the bigger scheme of things, it doesn't matter. I just like, oh shoot, I'll just give myself an extra month to work on it. If I don't get to it, then, oh well. Then I think to myself, the most important thing is around the people around me, I have to make sure that I give them energy, that I am a good influence, that I manage my own stuff. This is one of the reasons I try to manage my own emotions, so that when I'm talking with people, that I'm not dumping my negative stuff. Not that I do vent with people, but I don't because of my frustration, I don't take it out on other people. That's one of the things. And so I don't take it on other people, and I try as much as I can to appreciate other people. So if you guys could appreciate each other's work more, and I'm not saying you guys don't do it. If you guys could do that more in the community, you'll see that this one, we will get through this very well.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for your time and thoughtfulness. And I'm sorry I put a goal on your list to do this year to have you come and speak to us, and you took it, and we appreciate it. Thank you.